can be adjusted.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm not nervous at all.
Oh, good.
Okay, so my name is Teresa Menting, and as Lisetta and Barb mentioned, I am the director for the Women's Empowerment Series. And this series has changed my life just as it has changed everybody else's lives that have been involved in it. And I didn't start this program knowing why I was so passionate about it at first. So I started this mentoring program just seeing a need in our community and seeing how important these relationships really are for these women. So we had a mentoring program at Fond du Lac County, and I just thought, well, how do you really get to the core of helping someone when our mentoring was just introduce, and bye. It was kind of like blind dating, kind of really weird, and it felt kind of superficial. So I thought, we need to really dive into this, and how do we talk about these problems that are so needed and stuff that they really need to get help with, and they feel uncomfortable talking about. So let's start some classes and bring in professionals to talk about all of these different things that really stem at the core of what they're struggling with in their lives. So that's where the development of women's empowerment came from, and I've become so passionate about it. And I didn't realize that my experiences in my life led me to why I became so passionate about this. So not actually until I'd say about halfway through the series last year did I find that connection. So my TED Talk is called How Sharing Your Story Can Be the Key to Someone Else's Shackles. And my TED Talk came from this realization throughout my journey of developing this program for our county. So, are we ready?
Go for it.
Okay. We're just going to leave the judging to Jesus. Okay, so if I mess up completely, just pretend it was really good. Okay, so we all have a story that is made and molded to each of us. And these stories, they have chapters of love and hardships, successes and loss. The stories may all be different, but the feelings of hurt and happiness can all be the same. Now, the decisions you make and the situations you go through in life can cause a ripple effect. And that effect can add a link to the chain, and that chain can slowly shackle you down. My story starts at a young age as an obese child longing to be accepted. I will never forget the words of an 8th grade teacher. If you eat one less meal a day, you will lose weight. So in my mind, I took a meal out. This was the answer to my prayers. As an overweight child, I continuously struggled with getting picked on for my weight. And I never had boys ask me out. I rarely had girlfriends to have slumber parties with. I always wanted to be a cheerleader, but I wouldn't dare put on that uniform. And sports, let's be honest, I was more concerned with the uniform colors and picking flowers in the fields, but I miserably tried. I was willing to make any changes necessary in order to feel accepted. And for me, that change came in the form of an eating disorder. Now, the more weight I lost, the more recognition I received. It was working. People started talking to me and liking me. I thought I had it under control, so I continued to lose weight. I never thought it would get out of hand, or that something would happen to me in my life that would make it become more severe. But I was slowly putting myself into shackles that would take years to unlock. Now, growing up, my parents were incredibly supportive of me. They always told me to be whatever I wanted to be. So my senior year, I was actually accepted into the American Musical and Dramatic Academy in New York City. It was my dream come true. But my mom, for some reason, really seemed to struggle with it. And I wasn't sure if it was because of my weight, since it was so low, or because of the distance, because my mom and I were so close. But then she said to me, if you go to New York, you're going to get raped. Fast forward to 2018. I was standing in front of a room of women who were longing for change, feeling broken and alone. These women did not see the beauty they possessed. They hated the body they lived in. These women were continuously beaten down sexually, mentally, physically, emotionally. Some of them were sexually abused, used and violated by those closest to them. And then you had some that masked the pain with drugs and alcohol and then became sucked and trapped in this terrible addiction. These women were carrying a substantial set of shackles. And these women, they were growing tired. Now, I did not find a rare group of women. It's actually a lot more common than people may think. According to the American Psychological Association, approximately 1/2 of individuals will experience at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. And on top of that, 8% of those survivors will experience PTSD. And that number is doubled for women. And it's important to realize that trauma does not just come from being a soldier in a war or the victim of rape. Trauma encompasses many other acts that can be far too common in our lives, from domestic violence to chronic emotional abuse from a significant other. Research studies show that actually people that live with these offenses deal with higher levels of depression, anxiety, anger, irritability, relational problems, and in some cases, suicide. And in many of these, they deal with in silence because of the shame surrounding the event prevents them from seeking support. Now, these women, they all have a different story. They all have a different set of shackles binded to them, just longing for something to unlock them. And I wanted to show these women love and acceptance. So I started these classes in the community, and the women started to look up to me for answers. In one of our pre-classes, the women really started to open up and share about the struggles they endured. And I participated in listening and leading this discussion. And one of the women raised her hand, and she looked right at me and she said, "Who are you to know anything about what it's like to struggle? You have a perfect life." I wanted to say a few choice words, but I didn't. I held it together. After a few moments of shock, I took a few breaths, and I said, "I have been through my own trauma in my life." Now, this is a moment I never thought would happen. As public of a person as I may be, I am extremely private. I had plenty of secrets that I hid. I was a professional businesswoman and did not want to be known from these wounds that I hid from the world. But at that moment, I needed these women to see that I was walking with them, hand in hand, not above them. I needed them to see that behind this all, I too felt pain. Though it may not be the same pain as theirs, it was my pain. It was my story. And it was my story to tell. I had my own shackles. Shackles full of self-doubt and hatred for my body. Cuffs formed from this eating disorder that shattered my dreams and crumbled it all down to the bare bones. And a firm lock that proved my mother was right after all. That that violating attack in New York that my own mother predicted actually happened to me. I shut down. I chose to not tell anybody. And that under control eating disorder soon spiraled out of control, forcing me to leave my dream in New York City. I was then shoved into treatment, and my once perfect world came crashing out of control. And my shackles then were locked by what became my huge secret. And they only got heavier as I kept the silence. That silence just kills you. 3 whole years after that violating attack, I attempted suicide. Let me tell you, I did not want to die. I did not want to die. I wanted these flashbacks and these nightmares to end. But in my mind, it was the only thing that I could think of to just end it all. And it was at that moment, I was lying in the hospital bed, that my mom knew. She looked right at me and she said, "You were raped in New York, weren't you?" A moment of peace surrounded me as I finished sharing this story with this group of women. Tears streamed down many of their faces. Thank yous were muttered throughout the room. And smiles and a sense of softness came over all of these women at that moment. And suddenly, I had this new connection of sisterhood with all of them. I also had this new found peace within myself. And it was then that I realized storytelling as a powerful tool to cope with my trauma. Now, what I didn't go into detail about with those women at that moment was what happened after all of these terrible events. How did I not allow everything to just consume and paralyze me and not drag me down or lead me down a path that showed me no future? But the key to finally breaking free from my chains and releasing my past trauma came from somebody else sharing their story with me. And I actually didn't even realize this until last year that this was connected. But that person that shared their story with me years ago was my mom. Her story was so different than mine, but it showed me if she can get through struggles in her life and live a beautiful life, I can too. So at that moment, I gained this new ambition to start focusing on myself and live my life to mean more. I started to feel strong and connected with this world around me that I felt like I lived alone. Knowing that I was not alone on this journey now. My shackles were continuously loosening up and slowly unlocking, allowing me to live beyond the burdens of my history and the traumas of my past. Now, since then, my life has gone down many different paths. Some better than others, but all of those paths brought me to opportunities which led me in front of those women where I shared my story. Speaking my truth with those women that day showed me how shared experiences are also so powerful, not only for me, but also for them. In this program, we had many other people come and speak about the struggles they endured. And many of them would rather continue in their normal life that they know in hell, rather than jumping through the flames of unknown to a better life, because their norm is all they know. So encouraging these women to jump through these flames, to unlock their shackles, comes from them not feeling alone, having a voice and wanting to find their full self-worth. One of the women who graduated our first class came back to become a leader our second year. Since a young age, Carrie endured every type of abuse you can imagine. Even in her marriage, this abuse followed her. After finally finding a way out and struggling through a nasty separation, things took a drastic turn. While working as a nurse, Carrie received a call that would change her life forever. After several missed calls and text messages, Carrie was informed by her sister-in-law that her ex had plans to kill her and their 2 boys. Carrie's work and the boys' schools all went on complete lockdown. Police later found her ex with a trunk full of ammunition and guns. Carrie has lived in constant fear since that day. The psychological toll of that traumatic event and years of abuse caused Carrie to lose the job that she loved so much. Now, Carrie shared this along with much more of her story. And she has since used her story to help others. She has turned her pain into her passion. And her shackles have slowly been unlocking. Carrie said, "I have found it helps me heal by sharing my story with other people. If I can help one person, it was worth it. I can see the changes in those I talk to, their confidence in themselves and understanding it is not their fault. I tell them, you are not alone." No one carries the same shackles, but sharing my story personally has helped so many of them. Just as my mom's story helped me, and Carrie's story continues to help so many others. Now, Psychology Today states that sharing our story with someone we trust can help lift the feelings of shame that remain in the aftermath of a traumatic event, as we are oftentimes left blaming ourselves for the outcome. It can reshape the meaning of which we apply to our story, reminding us that we are not weak prey, but instead powerful survivors who deserve so much better. It can make the constant memories associated with the event less intense and less troubling, so they slowly stop holding us down. Now, this is the process I watched slowly unfold when these women would open up and share about their stories and the struggles they endured. Much of their healing comes from the realization that they are not alone. To see someone overcome their struggles and become so successful gives them hope that they too can accomplish the same thing. Public movement campaigns like Me Too are so powerful. Though sharing your story does not need to be as public as Me Too movement, everyone needs to find their own individual way that's true to them of sharing your story. Whether it's mentoring, getting involved in advocacy organizations, joining support groups, or speaking with loved ones and friends one-on-one. Because there's something extra special about speaking with someone in person and connecting on that emotional level, just like the sense of sisterhood I experienced when I finished sharing my story. Now, I didn't realize it right away, but sharing my experiences also gave me this new freedom. We thought that the shackles of our trauma were permanent, longing for something to unlock them. But I've discovered that sharing your story is the powerful key that unlocks the shackles, not for just those around us, but also for ourselves. This is my story, and I have given you the key.